With this video, we will discuss how we can use new sentence structures and synonyms to create paraphrases from information in sources that we'll be reading in our course. So we'll be writing an assignment in which you'll be asked to integrate evidence from the sources that we've read. And your goal is to include a summary or a quote or a paraphrase from one of the sources that you've read, or from more than one source, but we want to capture some ideas from at least one of those sources that we've read in the course. And so we've learned some things about summarizing. With quotes, that's where we choose the exact words from an author and we place those words in quotation marks. Paraphrasing is a more complicated way of integrating evidence. And it's sophisticated in that you have to really make sure that you understand the piece of text that you're reading and that you're stating it in your own way. And students will be asked to do this in many of the courses that they take. So it's great practice to experiment with paraphrasing in our course. So I would encourage you for this project to choose a piece of evidence from one of the sources you've read and to create a paraphrase of that sentence or sentences. And so with this video, with this presentation, we'll go over some strategies that we can use to develop our paraphrasing skills. And so as we talk about new sentence structures, it's important to understand that there are different types of sentences that we can use in our writing. And some of these terms maybe sound a bit academic. You know, we don't go around saying, you said this kind of sentence, and then you said that kind of sentence. You know, we don't really think about the types of sentences we use in everyday conversation. But when we write, we can think about that, and using different kinds of sentences gives us kind of a different style. It makes our writing sound unique. And so we'll go over three types of sentences here. Simple sentences are kind of the most basic kind of sentence. This is where we have one independent clause. And what that means is that this sentence, you know, just is one idea. It stands on its own because it has a subject and a verb, also called a predicate. And so a simple sentence might just be something really short like, I ate dinner, right? We have a subject I, we have something we're doing, eating or ate, and dinner, that's a complete idea there. We can also add on additional ideas, but there's still just one idea. I ate dinner with my cousin and my best friend. It's just a simple sentence and it just gets, you know, kind of right to the point. Then we have what are called compound sentences. You may have heard the word fanboys before, and this connects to compound sentences. So a compound sentence has two independent clauses. That means we're going to see two complete ideas in this sentence. And these ideas are connected by a comma and a fanboys word, or we could use a semicolon. And so here's an example. I ate dinner with my cousin, comma, and we split the bill. Do you see how that word and there in the center is combining two ideas? We could just delete the comma and the word and use a period here instead. I ate dinner with my cousin, period, capital W, we split the bill. This would be two simple sentences if we separated the sentence here. But we've decided to use a comma and a fanboys word to make the writing kind of flow. And so this is one strategy to make your writing sound interesting instead of just having some simple sentences. A third type of sentence is a complex sentence. And there's not an easy way to remember this here. You know, the fanboys words are 7 words that we use to connect to complete sentences. And I'll show you more examples in just a moment. But with complex sentences, there are many words that we can use to connect to complete ideas. Words like when, because, after, we'll look at more examples. But these two sentences are both complex sentences. And this is because we're taking two complete ideas and we're connecting them with a complex word like when, because, or after. After I left the restaurant, comma, I got food poisoning. Do you see how there's two ideas there? we could delete the word after, and we could write, I left the restaurant, period. I got food poisoning. But by using that word after, we're connecting these two ideas. After I left the restaurant, comma, I got food poisoning, right? We know kind of the relationship between the two, and it sounds more interesting than just having two simple sentences. We can also use that connecting word after in between the two complete sentences. I got food poisoning after I left the restaurant. And so if we think it sounds better that way, it's fine to use that connecting complex word after in the middle between the two. If we use that word at the front, we add a comma here. This is what is called a dependent clause. So I couldn't just put a period here and leave this as after I left the restaurant, because that would be a fragment. This is a dependent clause because it depends on more information to make this a complete idea and to make it grammatically correct. And so we have the dependent clause, it's like a big transition, then, comma, I got food poisoning. So this dependent clause is a longer transition. After I left the restaurant, right? It's a transition, comma, I got food poisoning. And so it does take a little bit of practice to remember this comma rule. Start with a dependent word, make sure I add a comma after this first simple sentence, and then I have a second simple sentence and combining together. Whereas when we put that connecting word in the middle of the two sentences, we don't need the punctuation, we don't need the comma here. And really, I just think that takes practice, and I will help you, with your assignments, help you ensure that you're using, that punctuation correctly. And so this slide here gives you more examples of the words that connect compound sentences, right? The fan voice words, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. So these are the 7 words that we can use to create a compound sentence. So we would take one complete idea, a comma, one of these fan voice words, and then another complete idea. Again, with the complex sentences, there's not an easy way to remember all of these words, and there are many of these words that can create a complex sentence. If you look up more information about complex sentences, you'll see a term, subordinating conjunction. That's what type of words we have here. I think, that's a very technical term. You don't really need to remember it that way. The way that you may find it more helpful to remember is these are words that can make a simple sentence dependent. They make the sentence need more information. And so these complex dependent words are words like after, although, because, before, even though, since, until, when, though, while. So there's many of these words that you can use. You may find it helpful to pause this video and to write this information down so that you'll have it. And I just listed some of these words here. These aren't all of the dependent marker words or subordinating conjunctions. There are many more, but these are some common dependent words that you might use, and we'll practice with these today. So again, you might want to pause the video and write down these examples, write down the fan voice words, and write down the dependent marker words, because we'll be using them in this practice activity that's coming up next. Great. All right. So let's look at some quotes from the pieces we've been reading, and let's try to identify the sentence type. So remember, I'm going to go back just for a moment. Compound sentences have a fan voice word, or at least one fan voice word. They may have more. And they have at least 2 complete sentences that we could pull out of the compound sentence. And we could take out the fan voice word and place a period there instead. And complex words, again, have at least 2 simple sentences that we could pull out of the sentence, and at least one of these dependent marker words. And so we're going to look at some example quotes and try to see if we see these words in the quotes. So here's the first quote. Humor and laughter are good for reducing stress, at least temporarily, and less stress is associated with fighting all sorts of adversities in life. And so we want to identify the sentence type because this will help us in paraphrasing this sentence. So do you see any fanboys words? Remember, fanboys words are the words that we use to create a compound sentence. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, so, right? You do see some of those words, right? And, see the word and here, humor and laughter. I also see that word here, and less stress. And so to determine if this is a compound sentence, what we want to do is delete the fanboys word and place a period instead. And if we have two complete sentences there, one before the period and one after, that will tell us this is a compound sentence. But if I put a period here, the word humor, that's not a complete sentence, right? And so fanboys words don't always determine that you have a compound sentence. Remember, you have to have a fanboys word, and you have to be able to take out that fanboys word, put a period there instead, and then have two complete sentences. And that would not be the case here with humor and laughter. So we wouldn't want to put a period here. Let's look at this other and, right? So what happens if I take out this word and I change this comma to a period? Do we have two complete sentences? Do we have one complete sentence on the first side and another complete sentence on the second side? You might read this to yourself. You could pause the video, right? Decide, can I put a period here? Do I have two complete sentences? The answer is yes. So it would be fine to change this comma to a period, and I would have two sentences. Humor and laughter are good for reducing stress, at least temporarily, period. Capital L on less. Less stress is associated with fighting all sorts of adversities in life. So this is a compound sentence. So it could be a little tricky, right? So first look for fanboys words. If we didn't see any fanboys words, that would probably be a clue. This is not a compound sentence. But in this case, this is a compound sentence because of that word and, right before and, less stress. So look at the two sentences here. And remember, look first for fanboys words. See if you can find any. You might find also this helpful to write down this sentence. Try crossing out a fanboys word if you see it, put a period there instead, and decide, do I have two complete sentences then? Or am I creating a fragment, a little piece here that doesn't have a complete idea, like the word humor. If I put a period there, that would be a fragment because it's not complete on its own. It doesn't have a subject and a verb, and it doesn't make sense on its own. So do the same thing with this next sentence, sentence 2. Look for a fanboys word, cross it out and add a period. Try to decide, is this a complex sentence? Then look for dependent marker words. So look at your notes or rewind this video just a little bit for the example, right? Dependent marker words. Try to see if you see any of those, and you might circle them or cross them out and try to decide, could I place a period there instead? With the third sentence, do the same thing. Look for fanboys words, look for complex dependent words, circle them or cross them out. See, can I add a period? And once you've done that, you can start the video again. So pause it and try it. Okay, so let's look at what type of sentences we have here and talk about why we have these types of sentences. So here you can see we have marked what kind of sentence each of these are. The second sentence is a compound sentence. So were you able to identify it in that way? Did you see any fanboys words? Because that's what we'd look for a compound sentence, right? Humor can diffuse tension, and so humor is an important tool for conflict resolution, but a misplaced joke can do terrible unintentional damage. So actually, there are 3 complete sentences in this piece. And so if we wanted to separate it, what we could do, humor can diffuse tension. That's a complete idea. We could place a period here, and we could take away both of these fanboys words. And so capitalize the H on humor. Humor is an important tool for conflict resolution. Put a period there, right? delete the word but, capitalize the A misplaced joke can do terrible unintentional damage. So this is a compound sentence with 3 simple sentences that are combined by fanboys words. And so if you weren't able to see those 3 individual sentences, that's okay. This does take a bit of practice. And the more practice you get, the easier it'll be, just like anything. You know, we want to practice and develop this skill. And so, you know, let's look at this next sentence. Again, with practice, we can see that this is compound and complex. So we have both rules happening here. I'm going to read this sentence aloud. And again, check your writing, check what you've written down. Do you see complex or compound words? Were you able to identify them all? I'll read it aloud now. First of all, when someone tells a joke and it works, it's funny, it's appropriate, and the joke teller is viewed as having greater confidence, competence, and status. So compound words, do you see the fanboys words that are connecting? See this word and here, right? And if I put a period here, I can check both sides. This is where it gets a little complicated because there's also this word when, right? Which is that complex word. We have, first of all, I can't just place a period here because this would be a fragment. We don't have someone doing something. So this is just a transition. I'm going to ignore it for now. It's not necessary to the sentence. I could even just delete it, right? So if I take out the word when, which is that complex word, there's a little simple sentence here. Someone tells a joke, right? Someone's doing something. And so we can take away this comma, place a period instead, and delete the word and. Someone tells a joke, that's our first simple sentence. It works, that's our second simple sentence. And I know it doesn't seem like a complete sentence because it's kind of boring, right? It's very simple, but we're saying the joke works, and that's a complete idea. It works, period. It's funny, that's also another complete idea. So we capitalize the I, add a period. It's funny, period. It's appropriate, also a complete sentence. Capitalize the I, add a period. It's appropriate, right? And then the joke teller is viewed as having greater confidence, competence, and status. That's also a simple sentence. The joke teller is doing something or is perceived as something. So we have a capital T, right? Period here before. And so in a sense, when we pull this whole sentence apart, we have one simple sentence here. Someone tells a joke. It works is the second simple sentence. It's funny is the third simple sentence. It's appropriate is the fourth simple sentence. And then this longer piece is the fifth simple sentence. The joke teller is viewed as having greater confidence, competence, and status. And so this writer here has combined 5 simple sentences to create this really unique, interesting sentence. And this is where we show this sophistication. So we'll be practicing with this skill going forward with other activities. So if this seems a little bit confusing, just practice. You'll build your skills as we go. Okay, but this is our start to helping us paraphrase. The reason we're looking at these types of sentences is because remember with the other resources we've read about paraphrasing, we have to have a new sentence structure when we write these ideas using our own words. And so if we see that we have a compound sentence, maybe what we want to do is develop a complex sentence instead. And that way we'd have a different sentence structure, right? Instead of using the word and, could we use a word like when or after or while? That could help us in creating a new sentence structure. With this lengthier sentence for the third sentence, maybe we want to separate it into a couple of separate sentences. Maybe we want to create a compound sentence and then a simple sentence. And so by understanding these types of sentences, that gives us tools to help us in paraphrasing. Because in order to effectively paraphrase, we have to create a new sentence structure and we need to use our own words. And so let's talk about how we'll apply this with paraphrasing. Let's practice a little bit. And so with this first example, this is a quote from one of the sources that we've read. Notice that the quote is in quotation marks. We have the author's name and we have which page it was on. So these are the pieces you should collect before creating your paraphrase. Make sure you have the exact words the author used. Make sure you have the author's name. And if there's a page number, you should include that. If you're using a website, you likely won't have a page number. And so that's fine not to include a page number for a website. But for other pieces like articles or books, we should include page numbers if they're available. And so to create a paraphrase, there are two steps, two kind of strategies to think about. We want to identify the sentence type, so we can think about using a different sentence structure. And we want to look for key terms that we see in the original sentence and try to choose synonyms. So words that mean similar things so that we can change up our vocabulary and we can change the type of sentence we're using. So I'm going to read this sentence to you, and then we'll talk about how to do this, how to do these two steps here to help us paraphrase. So I'm going to read this sentence to you, and let's think about doing these two steps. In a study published in the Journal of Holistic Nursing, patients were told funny one-liners after surgery and before a pain medication was administered. Those who were exposed to humor said they felt less pain compared with patients who didn't get a dose of humor as part of their therapy. And so what type of sentence or sentences do we have here? We already see two periods, right? And so we have more than one sentence. What kind of sentence do you see? You might pause this video and look for those fanboys and dependent marker words. Fanboys words are for compound sentences, and the dependent marker words are for complex sentences. Okay, so you probably noticed that we do have some of those words. We have after, right? And we have and we have before, but I don't see any of those words in the second sentence. So if you would want to experiment with taking these words out and adding a period to see if it creates more than one sentence. In a study published in the Journal of Holistic Nursing, patients were told funny one-liners. The word surgery is not a complete idea, so this would be one complete idea, right? We're told funny one-liners after surgery, period. We take out the word and the word before. Pain medication was administered. That does make sense on its own, right? And so in a sense, we can separate these two sentences into two complete sentences, two simple complete sentences because of the words and before, right? And so the word and is the word that's actually kind of separating these two ideas. So this could be, this first sentence is actually a compound sentence, right? It can become two sentences. This sentence here, those who were exposed to humor said they felt less pain compared with patients who didn't get a dose of humor as part of their therapy. This is all one sentence. And so we can't really separate it unless we add more words. So we have a compound sentence here, right? In this first sentence. And so we would write over here, compound. The second step is to identify key terms and to try to choose synonyms, words that mean similar things, so that we can use new vocabulary in our paraphrase. So with patients, are there any words you could use instead? Maybe with pain medication, are there any words you can use? You might pick out some of these words that you think are important to the sentence and try to list synonyms. So instead of saying in a study published in the Journal of Holistic Nursing, there may be a different way to kind of introduce the source, right? Maybe the Journal of Holistic Nursing explains, right? We might do that instead. And so you might pause this video, list some of these words like patience. Is there another way that you could, or another word you can use instead of patience? One-liners, is there another word you could use instead of one-liners? Pain medication, is there another way to state that, right? You can list words that you're seeing and identify synonyms. And using the internet is fine in this sense. What you might do is look up, you know, synonym for patience, or synonym for humor, or synonym for one-liners. And that can help you in listing synonyms here. So here's what I have listed in my work in you know, identifying the sentence types and in choosing synonyms. So remember, we saw two simple sentences, right? And a compound sentence. So we don't really see any complex sentences here. So this could be a clue that maybe we could develop a complex sentence with our paraphrase. I chose the words published by, and I maybe am thinking of using according to. I chose the words were told, and I'm thinking maybe the verb heard might be better. One-liners, I think another way of saying that is jokes. Patients in surgery, I might just say those who underwent surgery. And I think another word for pain medication is painkillers. And so I have these different pieces here, right? These different vocabulary words, and the idea that maybe I want to develop a complex sentence, and that may help me write my paraphrase. And so this is the hard part, where we have to experiment with these terms and try to write this in our own way. I'm going to show you my example, and then we'll complete a second example so you can practice. So here is where I have written my paraphrase. See how I'm using according to. According to the Journal of Holistic Nursing, research has found that after undergoing surgery, those who heard jokes, in addition to receiving painkillers, felt less pain compared to those who only received pain medication. And so, you know, it does take some practice. I'm probably making it seem a little bit too easy here, right, to do this paraphrase. You'll have to experiment. So take the new terms that you're using and try to maybe create a new sentence structure. With this, I just made one simple sentence, right? And, you know, it did take me a little bit of time to kind of experiment with what I thought sounded best, and it may take you some time as well. And so it does just take practice, but the important thing is we don't want to just replace words with synonyms, because that's not effectively paraphrasing. You could be accused of plagiarizing if you just change, you know, words to synonyms and keep the same sentence structure. We need to write it in our own way. Notice, you know, that I'm writing and using different words, and I'm structuring this in my own way. I've combined those two sentences. This period is no longer in my sentence here. And you could pause this video, read the original sentence again, and read my paraphrase. Think about it and think about, is there a way that you could do it differently? And you could practice. And so when you're ready, we'll move on to the next example. So here's example 2. This sentence is shorter, and I picked a short sentence to give you some practice on your own, because I know this can be a little bit frustrating. And you'll get practice doing this also in the discussion this week, where you'll be asked to use one of the quotes that's included and to write your own paraphrase. So here's the original sentence for this practice activity. Stanford School of Medicine studies have reported that the average kindergarten student laughs 300 times a day, but adults average only 17 laughs a day. That's kind of sad, right? To think about how much laughter we lose as an adult versus as a child, how much laughter children have. And so this is from Tate Russell's piece on page 36, something that I neglected to point out to you on this example. See how the author's name is here with the page number. This is how we give credit to the author. We have our paraphrase, and we still need to give credit. And so we can include the author's last name and a page number if we have it, or we can start with the author's last name. You know, Russell explains that according to blah, blah, blah. But we need to integrate the author's name and the page number if we have it. If we don't have a page number, we just include the author's name. Notice how the word page is not included here. This is MLA format. In MLA format, we need the author's name and the page number, but no, not the word page, okay? And so as you write your paraphrase, make sure to include the author's name and 36, right, for the page number. So try to identify what is the sentence type and look for some key terms and synonyms that you could use instead. So with kindergarten student, is there another way of saying that? With adult, is there another way of saying that? Instead of saying reported, right, is there another way you can introduce Stanford School of Medicine? And then, you know, with your sentence type, if you see a complex sentence, maybe you could create a compound sentence, right? If you see a word when, maybe you could use the word and, or vice versa. If you see the word and, maybe you can use a complex word like when or while. And I would encourage you to pause this video, go through this process on your own, and then restart the video to see my example, which is coming up next. So here's what I identified. I saw that this could be a compound sentence. So see this word but, right? You know, technically in academic writing, it's best for us instead to have a comma and then a fanboy's word connecting two sentences. This is more informal. You know, it just depends on the type of piece you're writing. When you're texting, we don't really worry about how, you know, it sounds informal to begin a sentence with but or and. And so technically this is a compound sentence, but it's not punctuated the way we would expect for academic writing. And then I chose the word reported, and I'm going to try to use the word explain instead. For kindergarten, I'm going to try to say ages 5 and 6, because I'm pretty sure most kindergarten students are ages 5 and 6 years old. And then for adult, I'm going to try to use the words grown men and women, right? You may have chosen different synonyms, that's fine, you know. Each person writes their paraphrase in a different way. And that's really neat, actually, to see you know, how many different ways we can paraphrase something. You will see in the discussion this week that your classmates will probably paraphrase the sentence that they're selecting or sentences they're selecting in their own unique ways. And so that's kind of neat to see. So here's what I decided to write for my paraphrase. Researchers at Stanford School of Medicine explain that while grown men and women laugh only about 17 times per day on average, children of ages 5 and 6 laugh 300 times per day on average. And then I have the author's name and the page number. So something that I want to point out to you is that I used the word while. That makes this a complex sentence. Originally, the sentence had the word but, and so I saw this as a compound sentence. I wanted to create a complex sentence instead with the word while. Also, I kind of flipped the ideas. Do you see how the original sentence ended with the information about adults? And in the middle, we had the information about kindergartners. So I decided that I was going to write about adults before kindergartners. So I have here, while grown men and women laugh only about 17 times per day on average. I'm starting with that, and then I'm leading into what children do. And so it can be also helpful to take the last idea you see and try to start your paraphrase with that, and then add in the middle idea, right, the first idea. And so to kind of move the ideas around can help you in stating this in your own way. Sometimes people find it helpful also to cover up the original, look away from it, and try to write it in your own words, right? Paraphrases are different than summaries because we're trying to keep the ideas about the same length. We've talked about summarizing and how we condense, right? We take a longer piece and maybe write a paragraph or a few paragraphs about it. That's summarizing, that's condensing just the main ideas. Paraphrasing is different because we're taking just a sentence or two and we're trying to produce a sentence or two, the same kind of amount of length roughly. And so it'll feel different to you, right? Instead of condensing, you'll be kind of just trying to describe in your own way. So if you find it helpful to cover up the information and then write it your own way, that can be a helpful strategy, okay? And so I hope that this was helpful for you. I know that it can be a little bit challenging to try this. And so maybe come back through the PowerPoint, right, as you're practicing. I'm going to jump toward the beginning. So this slide can be really helpful in identifying compound and complex sentences. You might keep this open when you are working on the discussion this week. And please let me know if you have questions. Remember that it is important to include the author's name and the page number if you have it. And so you want to include that somehow, because as we go forward in using this information, we can accidentally plagiarize if we forget to include the author's name. You know, imagine you have notes with several paraphrases that you're collecting from different sources. If we don't keep track of those authors' names, it's likely that we may forget to include the author's name when we use the material in our own writing, or we could mix up names and we could have all kinds of problems with plagiarism. So keeping careful notes is very important. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you'll write in the discussion this week when you paraphrase the quotes that you're seeing there. I'm happy to help you. So if you have questions about this activity, just let me know. And I hope that you'll find this valuable to practice with paraphrasing, because you'll be using this skill in other courses that you take in your college career. So thanks so much for watching this video. Please contact me if you have questions. Take care. Okay, bye.